Good afternoon, and it's such lovely and quite an honor and privilege to have someone whom I have watched in social media. I have never met her in person. I don't know her personally, and I've always been I think I attended one of the sessions by Ed Fridays, Ravi Satnani's session, and where Lakshmi ma'am spoke as she was a speaker, one of the speaker. And that's when I started following Lakshmi ma'am, and I was quite inspired by the way of the person think and the thought process, and overall how she carried out the entire conversation. So here am I, that time I had in mind that the next person in the series of In Conversation with educational leaders would be Miss Lakshmi Kumar. So here we are before the year ends, and before we say goodbye to 2021, I think this would be one of the last sessions of Enabled by Shibi Anand this year. And I'm very, very happy to welcome Lakshmi ma'am to this platform. And so Lakshmi ma'am, thank you so much for agreeing to spare this much time out of your busy schedule for all of us out there. I would like to know a little bit about yourself.
I'm soon reaching 60, but in my heart, I'm very young because age is just a number. And education has always kept my spirit alive because I live with young people, and young people kindle enthusiasm and hope in me alive. On a professional front, I'm an educator for 3 decades. I have also been an intercultural coach, working with people from different cultures, equipping them with social, cultural competence to work with people from other cultures. It kind of very beautifully, organically flow in the other because I borrow a lot of principles of intercultural work with intergenerational work. Because when we work with young people,
yes,
we do need to transcend our generational cultural beliefs and contexts, and imagine to be in their shoes, so to say. So they are very mutually complementary in that sense.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. And I come from a mental health space, originally trained as a social worker in mental health field.
Great.
And for me, that's kind of the the foundation on which I work as an educator.
I think that's one of the core criteria that I, as an educator, keep for my fellow educators, to work, to keep that important aspect in mind while we are working with our children, while we are working with our colleagues, or anyone for that matter, because mental health is important for all of us out there. So
Absolutely.
it's absolutely wonderful. I saw that you are an alumni of TIS, and how your varied work experience and your exposure to this educational field. I'm sure that all of those who are going to listen to this conversation will definitely have a few takeaways. So here's the next one for you. Miss Lakshmi Kumar, 15 years back and now, what has changed? If anything has changed in you, what has changed?
At an emotional, social, personal level, I think I have learned to be good in letting go and not falling apart. Because I know that going with the flow is better than constantly resisting it. That sounds a bit spiritual and philosophical, but I think life journey teaches you that there is always something better waiting for you. So don't hold on to something that probably is not yours.
So does this,
but at the professional levels, sorry,
this letting go comes naturally to you, or you over a period of time has learned how to let it go? Because
over a period of time, it hasn't come naturally to me, but over a period of time, uh, I realized that if, let's say, I apply for something and I don't get it, Now I know that maybe there is a reason behind it.
Okay.
So I kind of move on rather than, but that could always be because of the age and stage of life that I'm in.
Right.
uh, Professionally, if I were to just put my hand on 15 years and now, it's the context in which that we are all operating today in the current pandemic situation. I
Mhm.
am an absolutely new professional educator. I have no clue of how to run schools.
Mhm.
So all my 3 decades of experiences are not really something that I can draw an inferences from my experiences, but I cannot rely on the past experience. So I am very new, fresh to the education pandemic 2.0.
Okay. Right. So, among all this that is happening all around us, how do you practice self care?
Um, I think, if you were to segment, especially women's lives, as women and professional, uh, I know there is a phase where we as mothers, kind of neglect and we put others' health over our own. And when our children are kind of grown up, suddenly all the parameters wake you up, when you are going through your annual checkup or something like that. Thankfully, it's not too late.
Mhm.
So for me, self care is about uh, having some discipline, a lot of self discipline, and adhering to the commitment. And if I've set my goal, uh, I make sure that I meet with it. And I am very consistent and persistent, whether it is about dietary discipline or whether it is about, uh, yoga routines or walk routines. I make sure that I do not compromise on that. So I think for me, that rigor and discipline is first prerequisite for self care, because we all start with lofty goals.
Right.
Yeah. And the second one is about, we all know, but we don't do. So I consciously make it a point to bridge this gap in self care. If I know that I must get 7 hours of sleep, uh, I kind of psych myself that I must get that 7 hours of sleep. Otherwise, I'm not a very nice person. So, it's about also, again, going back to self regulations.
I
So for
think
me, self discipline and self regulations are two guardian angels for self care.
self-care. I think that's a very, very fresh perspective when we talk about self-care, because as women, we consider everything else to be of highest priority. And we keep, checking those off our checklist. But somewhere down the line, because we think, okay, I'll do this later, maybe it's my time to just sit down quietly and have a cup of tea, and I something comes up, I would just leave my cup of tea and go. But then it's also possible that I could just have that cup of tea and then go after something.
Yeah.
So
I
it's
mean, self care is not about indulgence, luxuries, or selfishness.
right,
It's about respecting your own body
right,
and listening to your body, because your body gives plenty of signals of slow down, take it easy, or step back, or just sleep over it, or take a deep breath. Body is constantly giving you signals. But
right.
if we are not sensitive and not listen to our own body, I think then a lot of talk but not the walk happens.
Right.
And I also think that self care is the best way of modeling to our community, our students, our teachers, that that here is someone that who really very clearly has self control and self regulations when it comes to her regimen, her routines. And uh, and I think that's also a nice way of influencing people around. So now when we have lunch oftentimes we talk about it because I'll have lunch with my team.
Mhm.
So, there are times, when I say a very clear no for sweet, and I know that people are taking note of it, but and they will say, ek hi to hai, kya hota hai?
Right,
And
right.
I say, ek hi to hai karke bahut kuch hota hai, So I think you also send very clear signals of that you mean that it is a serious business about self-care.
Right.
And like I said, we are not talking about luxury indulgence. We are
Right.
talking about listening to our body.
Hmm. Are you based in Pune? Right
Yes,
now, at present, you're based in Pune. So,
yes.
and I think you oversee everything at school also. So, self, family, and work. How do you balance?
That again, I must, very clearly contextualize, Shibi, because when you have very young children, I mean, I was once upon a time a young mother with two young children. The work life and family balance was a skewed up balance, because your children do take a priority.
Right.
And if you are a career oriented, and also if you are a second parallel breadwinner of the family, you
Mhm.
cannot ignore work too.
Right.
So the self does take a little back seat, but we need to constantly revisit this cycle.
Mhm.
Is to say that there was a time that my children could take a back seat, and that doesn't mean I'm a bad mother, that I could travel and I would travel for work, and that I don't need to go loaded with guilt feelings because I have a supportive parent who is looking after them, my partner, my husband. And there are times that work does take phases of time when you are at a peak of your career building or the demands of a leader. So I think it's again to naturally listen to the phases of your life. Whereas now my children are grown up, they're adults and they're on their own, and the work kind of flows in, and definitely I have time for also looking after me. So
Right.
it's about, I think, not one over the other. It's about sometimes some things are in the back burner and then you bring it, but this has to be very rhythmic.
Yeah, it's a cycle. It's not like
Yeah,
there's one stagnant thing that's happening. It's not just work, 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 or
yeah,
family,
yeah,
family, family, but there is a bit of everything, coming in
yeah,
and going as and when, it
yeah.
requires.
But, I have always held this belief there is nothing called work life balance. You
Mhm.
work and you live. And, if you love what you do, I think that's something that you're blessed with, and that doesn't become a very stressful thing.
Right.
And remember that life also goes through the phases of growth and dynamics and relationships and losses, and conflicts, all that. But you if you're going to focus only on in the gray areas, I think you miss out a lot on what's going right too. So
Right.
I think it's about living it both fully and completely, and rather than choosing one over the other. I
Yeah.
would never advocate women to say that your family is more important than the other, your children are more important, your career is more important. I think each of us know at some point of time what needs attention more.
Right, right. I think what you said is very, very true. Like living in the present or being in the moment, wherever we are. I think that's very, very crucial. Talking about leadership and talking about leaders, we have always have had this, plenty of plethora of choices when we talk about a leader and the quality that a leadership or a person in leadership position should have, whether it is an educational or educator who is a leader or in leadership in general. What, since you are dealing a bit of everything, you are in educational field also, and at the same time you work with other areas also, what according to you is, or what is your leadership mantra?
I think for me, the crucial and the centrality of is building trust. Uh, and building trust sounds very easy, but under that, if you open the layers of it, it's about being authentic, being genuine, having high level of integrity, walking the talk because people are watching you, and that there is genuine sense of connect with your team that you work with, and that you genuinely care for and empathize with them, but at the same time you also model the behavior of productivity and contribution to development of the organization. But all these lead to trust, and this trust, as I said, is a very consciously cultivated and contributed to the mutual connect. So for me, I think the leadership mantra is
Building
build
trust.
trust.
I
And you cannot build trust with authority. You
right.
cannot build trust with titles. Let me tell you, you can build a fear and compliance, but you cannot build a trust with authority. So I think it's a very, very fine and a beautiful element of being humane.
Right. I think I totally agree with that, or whatever you said. And, I personally uh, take all of this in, because the conversation that we are having right now, if someone asks me, I would say that, there was this friend of mine who's a part of me in that Wiki Mental Health Council Kerala chapter. She's also one of the council member, and she suddenly asked me, how do you know Lakshmi ma'am from Pune, the Orchid School? I said, how do you know? I said, I know her through the social media, and I've attended one of her session. And her daughter, it seemed, had studied at Pune at your school. I forgot her daughter's name.
Oh,
Her name is Reshma Murli. Okay, so
oh yes, Reshma Murli. Yes,
yes,
I know her.
so
Yeah,
world
yeah,
is a very small
yeah.
place, and I had the good fortune. And whatever you talked about leadership and about being authentic and genuine and building trust is of utmost important. I hope the leaders are taking a note of this. That is where everything begins. If in
But we also must remember that every parent is trusting you and
right,
trusting you with their world's best child on earth, you know. So I think we must be worthy of that trust.
right,
People trust you with their livelihood. People trust you with their vulnerabilities,
right.
and people trust you with, the way that you're going to guide because they believe in you. I think we must uh, earn and retain the trust that is actually invested in us.
Right.
And like I said, but it's not just about having a title. It's about building that trust every day in every action of yours.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Now, talking about the Orchid School Pune, I know that you work as a director of TOS. Could you share some of the best practices of your school, so that there we can also imbibe some of the good things that's happening there?
um, More than the activities that which all schools must be and are doing, I think the core ethos of building a school climate is what is Orchid's USP. I think without any exaggeration, I can say that people who have been part of Orchid, either as a teacher or as a student or as a parent, always take a part of them with them, because the working environment or the learning environment is very, very nurturing, very friendly and non-threatening and non-intimidating. And so that's the first thing that it's consciously cultivated culture.
Okay.
And many times we get this compliment that, oh, your school doesn't look like a school. It's very colorful. It's open door. People can walk in my office. I often come out and meet, and I wonder, how should a school be? If we don't create happy working spaces, how would we stay in that space? So that's the first thing.
Okay.
The second most important ethos for us is student first. So everything that we do, whether it is about a curriculum choice or about enrichment program or about future readiness or about policies and finalizing processes, we evaluate it from the student's point of view. What does it mean for our students? Because we must remember that we are here because of them.
Right.
And it more than the attitude of servitude, it's about building an ecosystem where students can thrive. So that's the second ethos of student first. The third ethos is about equity. And equity in terms of opportunities, access, in terms of opportunity to learn, that includes for the teachers and the staff, that includes in terms of anyone to have the possibility to voice out their perspectives, inclusion to another level apart from inclusion for children with special needs or inclusion of EW, economically backward group children. But it's also about inclusion of all categories of employees in the framework of policies and operations. So our decision making process is highly represented, and it is also highly kind of dialogued before we arrive at a decision. And we don't mind reviewing it because none of this is written on the hard stone.
Mhm.
And I think the fourth and the last important ethos that on which we, uh, you know, embed our students program is: does it make meaning for students? Is this program, relevant? And does it make and add meaning to our students' learning curve? Whether it is a Varkari project or whether it is about a Nag Panchami project, or we have recently done this 9 days, 9 stories during Navratri festival, or we talk about Ganesha in the history of Pune and the Bal Gangadhar Tilak's movement, or whether it is about environment, ecology, or about a dialogue with children of Pakistan. It's about, does it make meaning for our students? And not because I learned it when I was a child, or because curriculum or the board says so. We constantly look at how do we contextualize and making meaning for our students so that they buy in, because student engagement is very important, and
Mhm.
they must know why they are learning and how is it going to help them in their life.
Absolutely.
So, weaving around all this is whether, for example, when I say equity, we have class concerts till grade 8. Every child is on stage,
Mhm.
and we don't have this annual days. Or when we go on a staff retreat, all of us, entire staff, from the director to the kaka, maushis, and security are coming, and our rooms are allocated based on lottery rather than on whom I'm comfortable with or which two titles must share. And we consciously sit down and talk it out with them to make them feel comfortable and welcome, so that they do not, because we must not take our titles too seriously. Title is for a functional, program. And I'm not my title. And I think that needs to come up again and again. So our programs are very, very woven around the ethos.
I love this line that you said. I would like to, engrave it somewhere, that I am not my title, because I am someone who believes that you don't need a title to do something. If you really feel or you're passionate about something, you can just go ahead and do it. Nobody has to give you a title in order to carry out. And I think that makes a lot of difference, a lot of uh, change in perspective for you to feel inspired or to be motivated on your own to do something without somebody saying, okay, you are so and so, so you can do this, or this is your
Yeah, and all the titles and positional leadership is about, performing a function.
right.
But positional leadership doesn't define us.
Right. Very true. Talking about that, what is that one quality of indispensable quality that a leader must
Uh, I think ability to envision the future
have?
and looking beyond the obvious, and enroll your team. It's kind of, I'm saying this as a linear,
Right.
thing,
Right.
that if you envision, can you enroll your team? Can you show the future possibilities and get your team excited?
Right. Very.
That's important, and not convert the entire school as some kind of a routine functionality,
Yeah.
but that there is a great exciting future that you can envision, and kind of call your team and say, see, can you see this, can you see that, You- are you excited about it? I think that's what sustains.
Yeah. Bringing something, bringing that newness to your workspace every time, and getting your team involved in it, and making them also believe in what you feel is the new, that vision that you have, passing it on to your entire team so that there is a collective force working for the same vision. So,
Yeah, and I think one question that I often ask my team, because we get very absorbed and obsessed with activities, tasks, agendas. Okay, rarely we pause and say, why are we doing it?
mhm,
Or what's the what you say is cognitive skill or an attitude purpose does this serve for my student? So
right.
I think I find that if a leader is able to instill that quality in the team of asking relevant questions,
Questions.
why am I doing this? Seeking that why. I think then you're automatically more enrolled, because then you see it makes sense, rather than saying, oh, that's because Lakshmi said this, or that it's in the CBSE mandate, because we are always looking at some authority, kind of
Jealous.
top down.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right, right.
So
Very
I think that asking, because that's also what then teachers would pass on to their students, to encourage them to ask why, you know, and that if we can collectively seek a meaning for what we are doing, I think there are greater chances of practices being sustainable and
true.
ethos being, transferred to generation,
Right,
rather than the worry of, but after Lakshmi is gone, what happens?
right. Very, very true. And uh, I can understand completely what you said. I heard you saying that you have 3 decades of educational experience. I would like to know, this is a very personal question. Have you ever failed a wrong
Oh,
decision
oh yes,
or a
loads of
choice?
time. Thank God for that.
So,
Oh
because
yes, yeah.
I believe
One has
that.
failed in relationship, one has failed in assessment of people capabilities, one has made mistakes in the processes and procedures. Plenty.
So, do you think that a failure is something that should be normalized? If yes, how? And if no, why?
Failure needs to be humanized.
Very
To
correct.
be human
I'm
is to
taking note
fail.
of all these new terms that I'm getting, because I've always heard people saying failures being normalized. Now I know it's failures should be humanized. So
I
thank
mean, to be human is to also fail. you know uh, our mythologies and our histories and our great warrior kings all have failed. What have they revealed? The human element, human aspect of the great people, right? And that's what we have learned in all our mythological stories and of all religion. The great gods have failed, the great gods have misjudged, the great political leaders have taken wrong decisions, and we that's what we learn. And hence, I think to fail is to be human. So let's not pretend and, that we are this, absolutely infallible person. I think we are pretending. And hence, we are alienating ourselves from being who we are. Hence, we make a shameful label out of being a failure to children. Instead, if we were to say, well, it didn't work, it's okay. I think I misjudged it. And, I guess I didn't foresee it. So you are actually humanizing it and personalizing it and owning it, rather than, going on this defense of, oh, it is because you didn't give me the, heads up or update, or you should have briefed me. And, well, suddenly Omicron is here. Those are circumstantial. Eventually, I have the choice to make, to act, and that in those choices I can be, falling off. And I think to own up is what I think makes it so humane.
Right.
I mean, who hasn't failed in love? Who hasn't failed in an exam? Who hasn't failed in a relationship? Who hasn't failed in an interview? Who hasn't failed in an appraisal? So I think to not pretend.
I think all of
I
us.
wonder, I don't know if you've seen this wonderful iceberg of success. The tip of the iceberg shows success, title,
Right.
nice air conditioned room, and you have the SOP options, ESOPs that your company gives, you're traveling by a business class, blah, 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 everything about the success. Below that iceberg is all about, you have had criticism, you have had backlash, you have had colleagues letting you down, you have been rejected, and somebody has been preferred, there has been internal politics, and that you have probably, eaten your humble ego, and you've been now innumerous things that are hidden below. I think our children need to see, and we all need to reveal this entire iceberg and not pretend. And I often say, in my office, I have a round table and there are 5 chairs. That's all. Okay. And I have a work side table. So when people come, they're always very confused where to sit, because there is no this leather chair which looks like a director's chair.
Share.
So I jokingly tell them, sit wherever you want. It's what you do will define your title.
Love it.
And I tell them that when I sit, this chair becomes a director because there are lots of thorns under my ass that you won't get to see.
Very, very correct.
So I don't have this one fixed chair, this holy chair where you cannot sit.
I'll
It's what, where you sit and what you do is what defines your title and your, success mantra.
very, very, very true. I think more than anyone else, I have got a lot of takeaways from this beautiful conversation that I had with you. Now, before we go away, is there anything else that you would like? I know you have so many things to give us, but if there is something that you want to share with your fellow educators, with your students, or anyone else for that matter who is listening to you as a person, forget about everything, as a person, what would be your parting message today?
Don't take yourself so seriously.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That makes so much difference to my life, because I was not very sure whether I would be able to do this conversation today, because I've not been keeping well for quite some times, and there was a lot going at home and at school, and I was, constantly having this conversation dialogue in my mind. I should tell ma'am that maybe I'll have it next year sometime, or let me just postpone it. This morning also I had my sisters visiting us for Christmas, so all of them were here. So I thought, oh, I don't think I'll be able to make it, because immediately after this I'll have to leave. It'll be a very hurry. I was trying to find out reasons to somehow, just drop this. But there was this other part of me that was conflicting what I was saying. I said, no, you must do it. You must do it. It's just a matter of 30 minutes. And I am so, so glad that
Responding to you, I have just one more thing, parting shot, and I say this to my team. Just take the risk and say no. Kya hoga at the most,
I understand.
or just say the risk to ask. Either the other person will say yes or no.
Right.
Nothing beyond that, right?
Right.
And I think this is part of self-care.
Yes. Thank you so much for saying yes when I asked you. I'm glad that I asked you, because to ask someone whom I do not know at all, and someone, and now I understand your leadership mantras and your philosophies, at least a tiny bit, and why you said yes
Thank
to
you.
a complete
Thank you.
stranger. So it was my privilege to have you today here with Enable by Shibi Anand. And
I loved it. I love the conversation, Shibi.
thank you so much, Lakshmi ma'am. And I'm so glad that 2021 is winding up with so many things that personally I am grateful for. And this is one more to add on to that list. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for all the insights. And thank you for speaking to me just straight from your heart, without any covers, and very simple, which I believe that all of us, when we listen to this conversation, will have a plenty of takeaways. So may good God bless you, keep you healthy, happy, and may He, make you do many more wonderful things. You've already been doing a lot, and may people like me always get to learn and grow from mentors like you. So thank you once again. I cannot express my words of gratitude, because I'm extremely honored and humbled at the same time to have you with me. I never thought this was possible. And at one point of time, I almost dropped it. But something or the other just let me that, no, let this conversation happen. So
Thank you. Thank you. And wish you a very, very happy new year.
thank you.
And may all of us take care of ourselves and have a very healthy universe in the coming years. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.